What is going on, fight fans? I'm here with another boxing video for you guys. I'm gonna be doing something that I usually rarely don't do. I'm gonna be doing a boxing prediction video, which is something that's very interesting. I mean, I just look at this card, I look at these fighters, I look at so much talent up and down the card, which is very, very interesting and very rare to see. But nowadays we're starting to get more and more of that, especially with the Riyadh season and the Saudis being more interested in boxing and the boxing fights that are coming on. We're going to get more stacked cards, obviously, with a lot more talented fighters, which is very, very good. I mean, honestly, they're kind of comparing themselves to how the UFC builds their cards and how they build it based on not just the main event being the whole selling point, but as well as the entire card being very entertaining, which usually for boxing cards, the undercard is just for, filler or just younger talented fighters that are on the rise to be able to show off their career a little bit more and possibly get some attention and some buzz around their name, especially fighting under the undercard of possibly, back in the days of Pacquiao, a Mayweather, Canelo, Cotto. You can go on and on, Golovkin, of these fighters of that nature. But this card, there's a few fights. I'm not going to be going into the entirety of this card, but I am going to be going to the meat and potatoes of this card. Obviously, the Andy Cruz and Antonio Moran fight is something that's going to be very intriguing, especially starting off this main card on the pay-per-view. That's a fight that, honestly, even with it being a no-name type of fight, it is a fight that is also very intriguing. But moving into the next fight of that, up the card, you have Martin Bakole versus Jared Big Baby Anderson. One thing I will say about Bakole is that yes, you may not really know his name or have seen him fight a lot, but he's very, very skilled actually for his size. He has a lot of talent and actually is looked upon as maybe as a gatekeeper as such, especially as of right now. I mean, he has a lot of very good wins on his record, especially against fighters that actually have pretty decent records, but again, are not really big names surrounding the heavyweight division as you would think. And while it is a good resume that he has, possibly, well, really in generality, he has a better record than Big Baby. He could be looked at as a big step up. He is replacing a fighter that he was supposed to, Jared Big Baby was supposed to fight. I think he was supposed to fight another fighter. Um, but you have to give a lot of credit to Jared Anderson for taking this fight upon himself, really challenging himself. He does have a lot of power in both hands. 17 fights, 15 knockouts. The last fight that he had went to unanimous decision. And for his size, and usually for heavyweights, for having a lot of skill and having a lot of talent, that is very showing. Him working with Shakur Stevenson, Andre Ward, Terrence Crawford, it does go a lot for him to show that type of maturity and growth that he has within himself. His best win so far for him, in my opinion, is Charles Martin, who's a guy that got knocked out by Anthony Joshua, which doesn't really mean much or say anything. I mean, he did win a heavyweight championship. But for my prediction for this fight, I think it's going to be too big of a step up for Jared Anderson. I think he is very talented, and I think he can come back from bounce back from a loss. I wouldn't be shocked if he did pull off a win against this, but Martin Bakole, I think, is a too big of a step up just for right now for Martin Bakole. But I do like that he is challenging himself, and he does have a lot of confidence in his ability and skill as well, especially again at the heavyweight division, to be able to think that he's going to be able to pull off this type of win. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if he did, but I don't really see it happening. The next fight that we have on the card is David Morell versus Radovic Hot Rod Kalajic. Have a lot of issues with that, but whatever the case may be. Radovic, he lost to Marcus Brown, and he did lose to Artur Beterbiev, who is obviously one of the better fighters as of right now, especially in the light heavyweight division. Some people have him in their top 10 pound for pound fighters, and especially with him gonna go into the unification bout that he is going against Bivol. I mean, it shows that he could have that potential of him going into that. He is on a 5 fight winning streak. He just defeated a former Cuban or another Cuban fighter, and Sullivan Barrera, who's a pretty good boxer himself. And David Morrell hasn't really had any big name fights that he has, but he has fought a lot of guys with good records and has a lot of knockouts, and I expect another one pretty much for him in this fight as well. we're moving up the card again for Jose Valenzuela versus Isaac Pitbull Cruz. Um, Jose Valenzuela, obviously knowing that he lost his fight against Edwin de los Santos, a guy that also fought Shakur Stevenson, the guy that had him running all over the boxing ring and not really wanting to engage in any type of fighting or throwing any type of punches. He did lose to him. Also had that very, very controversial loss against Chris Colbert. The first fight that he had, he looked like he pretty much dominated and took control of that fight, but the judges, in boxing, politics, judges happens all the damn time. Um, Unfortunately, he was able to rectify that loss coming off that robbery. I would call it a robbery, and knocking the fuck out of Chris Colbert in the fifth round with a nasty, nasty overhand right. But Pitbull Cruz, man, Isaac Cruz he's a monster, dude. He's just a mini Mike Tyson. He's just a tank. I mean, speaking of tanks, that's really where his name really came out of nowhere. It was his fight against Gervonta Tank Davis. Despite him losing, there was a very impressive performance that he had for himself going out there and really pulling on a fight, even though with Gervonta Davis breaking his hand, really forcing him to box, really forcing him to look a lot different than when he usually looks in a lot of fights. Usually he's the one pressing the action. He's the one wanting to look gunning for the knockout. And Isaac Cruz, man, staying true to his name, but just a pit bull, just stays in your face, is coming off right now a TKO win for Rolly Romero, is on a 4-fight winning streak against people like Gamboa and Giovanni Santos, I believe that's his name. Has starting to put up a really good record for himself. And man, I just see Isaac Cruz just putting on a pace, putting on that pressure that he usually always does against Jose Valenzuela. And I think he's going to be able to get a knockout. There's a lot of holes in Jose's defense. He leaves himself open, has a tendency of leaving himself open, and his hands down when he throws a lot of punches. Jose is very talented and very skilled himself as well, but tends to get himself into getting countered a lot because leaving himself open. And while his defense is tight, Isaac Cruz, he does look for those openings. And we move on to the co-main event between Jarrell Miller versus Andy Ruiz. And honestly, it's very, very interesting to see years later down the line, these two guys fight each other after their first previous introduction to these guys' selves was through Anthony Joshua, because Anthony Joshua was supposed to face Jarrell, another big baby Miller. And while that fight was supposed to happen, he got caught with PEDs, was suspended for I don't know how many years, but was suspended for a very long time. He was gone. His last fight that he had to previous to when he first came back was 2018. I believe he came back in 2022 or 2023. I believe it was 2022. And was gone. And the dude that came in and saved that card in that fight was Andy Ruiz, which you have that incredible upset knockout win over Anthony Joshua in the homecoming going into Madison Square Garden in New York. So now they come into each other, and now they're going to go head-to-head in the boxing ring. And again, while I was saying he was off for a while from boxing, from his suspension, he did have a 3-fight win streak that he come off, and he, quietly came back, and then he came into that fight against Daniel Dubois, and he was very, very overweight. And while he is known for his brash attitude and the way that he acts, like a dickhead, he's very skilled. He has a lot of talent, and hopefully he's not as overweight as he was last time out that he was there. And he's able to, have better cardio, have better pacing, and can be able to get back to that younger version of Jarrell Miller. But I honestly don't know. Again, even though his wins did come against other fighters that were not really as good as he is as of right now. And a long layoff for Andy Ruiz. We haven't seen him since his Luis Ortiz fight that he had, where he dropped Luis Ortiz 4 times in that fight. Obviously, you expect a lot from much. You already kind of, know with him, lightning quick hands, very good power, can be able to take shots on the chin very, very well. That's one thing I will give credit for Andy Ruiz, is that he gets hit with big shots, and especially in the heavyweight division, he's able to still stand up from those shots, and or able to come off the apron and off the ring, and to be able to continue to come back and throw those quick and heavy hard punches that he usually has. But in my opinion, with this layoff, I do expect a more mature, a more better looking version, and fresh looking version of Andy Ruiz to be able to get a knockout over Jarrell Miller in the ninth round. But I do expect a very competitive fight between these two guys. And now we move on to the main event, which is Terrence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov. Madrimov is I believe, an Eastern European fighter, so you know he has a Eastern European boxing style. Just come off a win against a undefeated fighter. Again, not really big names on his record, but has shown the talent and showed the skill that he has himself. Very straightforward. Kind of reminds me a bit of like a smaller version of a Bivol. But man, he looks like he can be a problem for Terrence Crawford. But then again, Terrence Crawford, uh, number one pound for pound in boxing. Him, Usyk, and Inoue are like the cream of the crop in terms of boxing. It's pick your choice. It's whoever it may be coming off that tremendous performance, probably the performance of his career against Errol Spence Jr., which everybody thought that was going to be the biggest test of his career, and he just flawlessly aced it. And between these two guys, I mean, we've seen Eastern European or European fighters go against Terrence Crawford and give him some type of issues with Mean Machine. I forgot his name, but I know his nickname was Mean Machine, and he gave him some issues, and he was giving him some problems, especially on the inside, and possibly could have knocked him down once. Even though I did not count in the fight, but it did look like it was a knockdown. So Terrence Crawford looking into this fight, he's getting a lot older, so you can't expect him to be a lot fresher or be the same type of fighter that he is, especially in his prime years. I think he's coming out of his prime and waning into his years. He's looking again for a lot more legacy fights in his career, looking for that Canelo fight, possibly a Jaron Boots Ennis fight. That's something that I'm very interested in, looking for him. But he should not be looking over Madrimov at all, because I do think that Madrimov will show and prove a lot of cracks, especially with age for Crawford. Even though I think Crawford will later in the fight dominate and show and prove his dominance and why he is one of the best or the best pound for pound fighter out there right now. I do think Madrimov will have some issues, especially in the early rounds for Terrence Crawford. But I will go for a eighth round TKO, or if not an eighth round TKO, I'm gonna go a unanimous decision if Madrimov is able to handle the power coming his way and position as well from Terrence Crawford. And Terrence Crawford will come out on top again, as he usually is, but will probably show a little bit of cracks in his armor that unfortunately, time will be able to show. And hopefully later down his career, he's still able to get those big money fights that he really wants for his career, pertaining to Canelo and obviously Jaron Boots, because those are fights that, man, honestly, like, those are huge, tremendous fights that need to happen. Like this video if you obviously like this video, you guys. This boxing predictions video that I'm putting out for you guys. Obviously, I don't put that type of video usually out. Usually, I just have my Saturday night fight night reactions for you guys, which is obviously something that you guys have been showing me that you really enjoy having, and also watching, and also wanting to stay in tune for that. And I greatly appreciate that from you guys. And obviously, I want to be able to push out more for you, so that way we can enjoy each other and enjoy the company that we're having, especially watching these fights together. Comment any predictions that you have for this card. Comment any predictions or any opinions that you have on my predictions that you believe will actually happen in this card. Subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content. You already know what's happening, and you already know what's going on with you guys. I'm pushing out this content every single day for you guys, so that way you guys can be able to enjoy and have this type of talks that we can usually have in the boxing sphere. And you know what it is, man. Again, subscribe to this channel, man. Really appreciate all the support so far. Thank you guys, and peace.